My channel. This is Art with Lita, and you are most welcome here. Today, I would like to take a look at some expensive watercolor paper and some cheap watercolor paper, and also we'll take a look at some paints and see when you would want to use a more professional paint, a more professional watercolor paint, and when you would want to use something that's a little bit cheaper and has more fillers. I think that's an intro, right? Okay, let's switch over to my desk and let's take a look. All right, this is the first paper we're going to be looking at. This is Arches 100% cotton cold press watercolor paper. Now this is the Ferrari of the watercolor world, of the watercolor paper world anyways. This is what all your professional artists are going to recommend you get because they are the best, or they are considered to be the best. There are other companies out there that make 100% cotton watercolor paper. Some of them are very, very good, like Arches. Many of them, especially ones coming out of China these days, are not that good, even though it does say 100% cotton on it. So if you are looking for what all the professionals use and something that will hold up to no matter what you throw at it, look for Arches watercolor paper. Now, you can find Arches paper in various sizes. You can find it in blocks or in pads, the way this one is. Now you can tear the papers out. And one thing to be aware of is that you have cold pressed watercolor paper, and you'll also find something called hot pressed. Now I don't have any that I can show you, but really the only difference is that the cold pressed has a texture to it. And I don't know if you can see in the camera there, but there is a texture to this paper that develops when the paper is made. So your cold press will have that texture. Hot pressed does not. It is a very, very fine watercolor paper. It's a very smooth paper, and a lot of times botanical artists prefer the hot pressed stuff, and everybody else seems to prefer the cold pressed. If I'm going to be spending the amount of money necessary for Arches watercolor paper, I'm definitely just going to go for the cold press. But let me tell you, I don't use this hardly at all myself because I see it and all I can see is this super expensive, precious watercolor paper, and I have a very hard time getting myself to actually tear a page out and use it for anything. And like I said, it is more expensive, but it is the best of the best. So if that's what you're looking for, then look here. Another paper I want to talk about is from the Fabriano brand. Now they also make 100% cotton watercolor paper, so that would be in the Arches category of things. But this one is Fabriano Studio watercolor, and it's actually 25% cotton, and it's much, much cheaper. This is also cold press, so it has a texture to it. And this is the one that I love. This is the one that I use the most. You can throw just about anything at it. Here you can see I was just doing some testing. Here I sprayed just some water on the page with my handy dandy spray bottle here. And I just dropped some color in to see how much movement the paint would get. And I was just very, very happy with it. This is much cheaper than Arches, but really it'll get you to where you need to go if you're a beginner watercolorist, and you need to put in, you know, as they say, all those brush miles. You need to be getting those brush miles in. You need to be practicing your washes and your water control and all of that. I would go for something like this. And frankly, I wish when I had first started out that somebody had just told me that it was okay to go for the cheaper watercolor paper. I wish somebody had told me, because, you know, when I first started out, I was under the impression that you had to have this. You had to have the arches. If you wanted your painting to come out, it was not going to come out unless you were working on arches paper. And frankly, that's just not true. Maybe if you are one of those fine artists who plan on becoming very advanced and you're planning on turning it into a career and you need to learn all the ins and outs and get to a really professional level, then definitely go with arches. But if you're a person who's more like me, it's more of a hobby, it's something you do to relax, then this right here will serve you just fine. This will be just fine. Your painting will turn out great, even on slightly cheaper paper. Another one that I want to look at is from Canson. This is Canson XL watercolor paper. This is quite cheap, but it's actually surprisingly good paper. It also has a bit of texture to it. This will take a lot of water. It'll take a bit of scrubbing. It does buckle a bit, so this is paper that you probably should tape down if you're going to be using it with watercolor. But this is actually an excellent practice paper, and it's excellent for just playing around, for experimenting, for testing your colors, for maybe following tutorials. Maybe you have these watercolor tutorials that you're following and you don't want to use your really good paper, but you still want to learn the lessons. Go ahead and grab a Canson XL watercolor pad and you can't go wrong with this. All right, two different types of paints I want to show you. I call this my transparent paints. Now these are from several professional level watercolor companies. I don't have any Holbein or Daniel Smith in here, but I do have Engram, I have some Sennelier, and I have a few others. They're all very transparent colors, and you can mix and match watercolor brands, watercolor paint brands. Don't believe anybody that tells you you can't. Get them into a palette, arrange them however you want, however feels good and intuitive to you, and use them. The most important thing is that you use them. Watercolor paints that are just sitting there not being used, well, it was all for nothing then, wasn't it? It was just all for nothing. Go ahead, look for professional level paints. That I do recommend. You can't go wrong with them. The colors are beautiful. You do not need as many colors as I have here. It took me many years to build all of this up. If you're just starting out, don't get this many colors. Get much fewer than this. Another type of paint I want to look at is the Kuretake colors. Now, these are not professional watercolor paints. This is actually a type of paint from Japan, and they actually can double as a gouache. If you are more into mixed media, or if you are doing lots of line and wash paintings, that is where you put down a wash of color and you go over it in like a black pen and outline things in a black pen. If you're doing that sort of thing, you can go ahead and get something like this. It has a lot of convenience colors in it. They can be more opaque, so it's not going to be as transparent, but it's still good enough to feel like you're using something nice. I would recommend that you avoid watercolors that say they are student grade. It will be cheaper, it will save you money, but it will hamper your ability to learn watercolor. So do go for something like this. Definitely get a palette together for yourself and fill it with transparent, professional grade watercolor. It really doesn't matter what brand you get. I'm not going to recommend any one brand. There's people on YouTube that do amazing reviews and they can help you choose exactly what brand you want to get. So go search them up, but do get a palette together with transparent, professional level watercolors. And frankly, you can't go wrong with that. You just can't go wrong. So let's do just a very quick review of what we talked about. We did go over the various papers. You have Arches, which is 100% cotton. It is the racehorse of the watercolor paper world. It is the best of the best. I would only recommend this if you're working exclusively in watercolor and you do have, big dreams to become professional level, then by all means go for something like this. But if you are more like me, it's a hobby, it's something you do for fun, you can learn a lot just by using these papers here and saving yourself a bit of money. I mean, look at the size of this pad here and look at the size of this one. Can you see that? And you just, I don't know. For me, it seems common sense, go for something like this instead. And when it comes to your paints, some Japanese Kuretake style paints, they won't put you back too much as far as money goes, but they're a lot of fun to play with. They have a lot of convenience colors, and it can also double up as a gouache and can be a lot of fun for mixed media type of paintings. And for watercolor paintings where you want to stick more exclusively to watercolor, put together a transparent palette with transparent paints. All right, that was it. That's all I've got for you today. Lita out.